wait to see what they come up with there.
Poor Usain Bolt, man.
I know, but at least it was after the race and he won it.
Yeah, it was limping. Not good.
No.
All right, let's welcome in our Friday roundtable guest. We're going to talk about Hillary Clinton. Yesterday, Hillary Clinton made a bold statement comparing Republicans to terrorists.
Extreme views about women, we expect that from some of the terrorist groups. We expect that from people who don't want to live in the modern world. But it's a little hard to take coming from Republicans who want to be the president of the United States.
I mean, now let's bring in our roundtable guest.
Yeah, let's do that now. Hey, we got everybody here today. How about that? Columnist for the Fiscal Times, Liz Peek, and the co-author of the book, How to Catch a Russian Spy, Ellis Henican. Glad that you could join us. Happy Friday to both of you.
Good to see you both.
Hi, happy Friday.
Well, Liz, did Hillary Clinton go too far with this comment? And wouldn't there be more backlash if a Republican had said the same thing?
I think that's probably true. I think she did go too far. It's sort of idiotic to compare Republicans who basically are affronted by what's going on at Planned Parenthood to terrorists. But, you know, my actual reaction to watching her say that was, it's almost like you can see the cogs turning in her brain as she sort of assembles all the various inputs she's getting from consultants and this group and that group. Did it look natural? Did it look from the heart or authentic? Not at all. It's like this calculated word by word sort of assessment. And I mean, afterwards, I don't know whether she went and said, oh man, I just blew it, or is she? The other thing I think that comes out of this that struck me was Trump is getting all the publicity. He's constantly in the news. Maybe other candidates are saying, wow, I've got to say something shocking to even make the headlines.
Right. Liz, we're having some connection issues. We're going to see if we can fix that so we don't have, so we can actually hear everything you're saying. But I think we got the gist of most of what you just said.
Similar to what you were saying earlier as well.
Yeah, I just didn't think she said it with conviction. I mean, she was sitting there looking at her notes the entire time, and you said the same thing, like maybe she was just doing this for shock value. That,
and you know, Liz also had a great point too, and Ellis, weigh in anytime you want. I mean, she had obviously, this was a plan, and the plan worked. She wanted to say something so outrageous that we folks would not be talking about her email scandal just for one day.
Okay, I think
here's the funny part, though.
Go ahead.
She actually has a point. I mean, listen, the rhetoric is a little overblown, right? I mean, we expect that from politicians. I mean, you know, everybody has strong feelings about these things. But I mean, let's think about the central point here, right? You've got a whole bunch of Republican candidates who believe, and let's focus a second on what this policy is that almost all of them have embraced. They believe that women who make a decision to have an abortion ought to be criminals, right? That abortion ought to be illegal.
But how does that translate to terrorism?
Now, hold on a second. She's making a point. Don't twist the words, John. What she said was, we expect that kind of extremist rhetoric from terrorists and other crazy people, but we don't expect it from people running for president. And I got to tell you, neither do I. I don't think women ought to go to jail who decide to make that decision. I don't think doctors and their husbands are the equivalent of murderers. I don't believe that. Most Americans don't believe that. But apparently, 17 people running for the GOP nomination for president do believe that, even in cases of rape and incest. And I got to tell you, that sounds kind of extremist to me. And I'll bet you Liz Peek doesn't even agree with that kind of policy.
Oh. Ellis, well, Liz, we'll let you answer to that.
Ellis, first of all, not all 17 have gone to that lengths of saying even under the case of... And I think that's a mistake. Marco Rubio came out and said that, and I think it's a mistake. But the truth is, you've got to go back and look at the polling. Most Americans think that there should be some limits on abortion. And I think that's what's evolving. We're seeing limits in terms of how many weeks into gestation someone is allowed to have an abortion. No one's talking about people going to jail because they have an abortion. People are simply trying to make a more human. No, they're in any case, people are simply.
What does it mean, Liz? But hold on a second. What does it mean if you make abortion illegal? What does it mean if you make abortion illegal? I mean, someone who does it is a criminal. That's what we're talking about. And every one of these candidates has views that are much more extreme than the American people. Yes, people want reasonable regulation and some kind of balance. They don't want to turn these people into criminals and send them to jail. They're not the equivalent of murderers. I don't care what they say.
Well, I want to go to what, if we could, just for a moment. I want to go to what Jeb Bush, because he reacted to Hillary's comments. Here's a tweet that he sent out. Hillary Clinton compares pro-life Americans to terrorists, but defends despicable Planned Parenthood treatment of the unborn. Her priorities are totally wrong.
Yeah, and by the way, I think, Ellis, what happened just now between you and me is, I think, so typical of the conversation that takes place on the topic of abortion,
Liz,
where the left just yells and yells, and basically...
Okay, if you can hear me, I'm going to have to interrupt you because we're having some connection issues. So we're going to try to get that worked out. Go ahead, Ellis.
Oh, listen, people obviously, there's a great diversity of opinions about abortion in America. And, you have to honor other people's opinions.
And Liz brings up a good point. Most people are in the gray.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really unfortunate that the Republican candidates for president are not in the gray. They're way, way over on the edge. We're talking about victims of rape and incest being criminalized, not allowed to make a decision about how to handle such a personal and tragic issue. The notion that police and prosecutors and congressmen and senators ought to make that decision for those women, I'm sorry, that is extreme.
All right,
I'm going to call it extreme. That is extreme.
We'll have to wrap it up right there for this portion of our roundtable. When we come right back, we're going to talk about Ted Cruz and his tactics out there on the campaign trail. He's got this bromance going on with Donald Trump. Is he just a fanboy, or is he playing a long game here, lying in wait for Trump's supporters when and if the Donald drops out of the race? Is that going to happen? Dick Morris thinks he could actually win it.
Once again, Ellis Henican and Liz Peek. Hopefully we have everything set up. We're told by our producer that your Skype is good. We're keeping our fingers crossed, Liz.
I have them crossed.
All right. Presidential candidates Donald Trump and Ted Cruz may be technically rivals in the GOP primary, but Politico reports the two opponents are actually teaming up for an anti-Iran deal rally in D.C. Cruz invited Trump to the event on Capitol Hill. Cruz also took on Fox's Megyn Kelly for what he calls a liberal journalist-style question just this week, and he's championed an immigration plan very similar to Trump. So what's going on here, Liz?
Look, I think Ted Cruz is obviously a very smart guy. Trump thinks he's the smartest fellow in the room, but he may have met his match. The best way for a candidate to get a lot of publicity right now and to gin up a huge crowd if he wants to publicize some event or whatever is to get Donald Trump involved. So it makes enormous amount of sense to me. And here's the thing. No other GOP candidate is taking advantage of Trump's enormous publicity umbrella. Cruz is doing that. And he's also not inflaming all of Trump's millions and millions of followers by going on the...
Liz, you're cutting out again. I'm so sorry. Ellis, we're going to go to you now. Do you think this is going to work for Cruz if and when Donald Trump starts to fade?
Well, listen, I guess it's the best thing he's got, right? Donald probably at some point is going to fade, and there'll be some people around to sweep up the crumbs that are left. I wonder, though, really, think about the kind of folks who are supporting Donald right now, right? I mean, most of them are drawn to the publicity, to the personality, to the celebrity. It's hard to imagine that all of them are just going to jump over to someone like the brainiac senator from Texas and figure that he's a substitute for the host of The Apprentice. I just don't know that he's going to be able to scoop all of them up. But hey, there's 17 candidates. Everyone has to play a different angle. And I guess that's Ted Cruz's right now.
What I think is interesting, though, here, we heard Roger Stone this week on Newsmax Now talking about the Trump NATO, weathering the storm. And a lot of the other candidates, in fact, all the other candidates, they seem so bewildered by how to deal with Donald Trump. And you look at Jeb Bush, he seems so tepid in his responses. Scott Walker has almost disqualified himself from the race the way he's dealt with everything here. But there's Ted Cruz just kind of waiting in the background, ready to pounce when the Donald Trump supporters start to say, you know what, now it's really a campaign and we need to pick somebody who we think can be president of the United States. We saw that poll also, Ellis, earlier this week, where folks love Donald Trump, but when they're also asked, especially Republicans, who they would never vote for, the answer is Donald Trump.
Why do you think that
listen,
is?
No, you're absolutely... Yeah, no, you're right, John. I mean, clearly Trump has affected the dynamic of the race tremendously, and he's made all of the other candidates seem a little faint by comparison. And so each one of them has to find some kind of way to stand out, right? So if you're Huckabee, you're jumping up and down and waving your arms and saying crazy stuff. If you're Ted Cruz, you take a different path, which is to basically be the suck-up guy. And you know what? Maybe one or the other of them will work, but so far, at least, you know, it all just seems like Donald all the time and the other guys.
In this rally that they're going to have in Washington, the anti-Iran deal rally, seems like a very Ted Cruz thing, kind of throwing himself on the sword here. This deal is likely going to go through. We heard Bob Corker say they're not going to have a veto-proof majority in the Senate, and even Mitch McConnell said it's probably going to happen. There's nothing Congress can really do to stop it at this point. So why not go to Washington, hold a protest that's probably not going to really do anything except just make it look like you're there fighting, like he did with the government shutdown and another of other issues. That's what I'm trying to say.
There we go.
That's kind of Cruz's MO.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's been the Cruz playbook, and he has aligned himself to causes that you know, excite his slice of the base, right? I mean, it isn't about convincing me or John or even convincing Miranda or Liz or any of us. I mean, we're not the target audience here. It's the folks, that little slice of the electorate that is, you know, real avowed Ted Cruz supporters and those who are potentials. And you know what? That issue speaks great to them. I mean, most of them are opposed to the Iran deal. It doesn't matter whether it's going to ultimately win because it seems likely to. But hey, you know, that's politics the way we play it today.
All right, Ellis, Ellis, thanks so much for sticking around. We had to let Liz go. We're having a little trouble there with her connection, but we'll have her back again very soon.
Definitely. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, too, is House Speaker Boehner and what he was saying about Cruz. I mean, really? Were you shocked by that?
No, not at all. I mean, this is the same guy who talked about his own caucus like they were herding cats. You know, I think, you know, John Boehner, you know, he's still the Speaker of the House, but the challenges that are coming from within his caucus towards the Speaker, you really wonder how much longer he can hold it together over there.
You do. All right, coming up next, right here on Newsmax Now, oil prices soared today, but they have continued to be on the decline for years. How that could impact the real estate market in some states, coming up.